Okay, this is Andy Stack. I'm currently chair of the CA Board of Directors. I want to thank everyone for attending our meeting tonight and remind everyone that it is being live streamed on our YouTube channel. I remind everyone to please mute your microphones unless you're speaking. Otherwise, we get a lot of feedback. When you do speak, please state your name so everyone knows who is speaking. Please be courteous to each other, speak clearly and slowly so that everyone can hear you. And board members, remember, please use the chat room so I know who to call on. So as for our meeting, the chair will introduce each item on the agenda, and voting, if need be, will be by roll call. And I will try to restate a motion before a vote is taken. So what I'd like to do now is call the actual roll for the board members. Nancy?
Yep, I'm here.
Jess?
I'm here.
Okay. Shari?
Here.
Dick?
I'm here.
Jenny?
Yes.
Renee?
Present.
Lynn?
Here.
Alan?
That's me.
Milton?
Here.
Andy, he's here. Okay, so we are here. Janet has informed us that she will not be able to attend the meeting. So there are the 9 voting board members plus Milton. Okay. Announcements for closed meetings. I have several to read into the record, so please be patient. There was a closed meeting of the Risk Management Committee on September 24th, 2020. Nancy McCord, Milton Matthews, and Susan Krabby were there, and then Lee Egan joined later. The vote to close was 3-0-0. It was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, board members, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation or other legal matters. The meeting was closed at 6:36 p.m., opened at 6:51 p.m. And the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the general liability self-insurance program with specific claims. There was a closed meeting of the CA Board of Directors on October 5th, 2020. Dick, Renee, Jess, Lynn, Janet, Alan, Nancy, Ginny, Shari, Andy were in attendance. The vote to close was 10-0-0. It was closed under Section 1, discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel. Meeting was closed at 8:04 p.m., opened at 9:14 p.m., and the purpose of the meeting, presidential search. And there was a closed meeting, the Architectural Resource Committee, on Monday, October 12th, 2020. Present were Sherry Faneroff, Deb Bach, Carl McKinsey, Ann McKissick, and Ed Gordon. The vote to close was 5-0-0. It was closed under Section 4, consultation with staff, personnel, consultants, attorneys, or other persons in connection with pending or potential litigation. Meeting was closed at 2:40 p.m. and opened, it was closed at 1:06 p.m. and opened at 2:40 p.m. And the purpose was discussion of new and ongoing covenant cases. And that is all the announcements I have. Approval of agenda. Ginny has asked one thing, that we move approval of the minutes down to board votes. So with that change, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved.
Nancy moved.
Second. Second.
Ginny seconded. All right. Is there any objection from the board? Nope. All right. It's unanimous. Okay, move on to residents speak out, and I have a sign-up list here. Um, First off, we have Nancy Lyon, Lyon. Nancy, are you with us? Nancy?
I don't believe she is.
Okay. Move on to Alex Bohemian. Alex? Alex?
Do not see him in our list either, but I do see our next, the final one, Gunther.
All right. Gunther Gottfeld. Gunther, welcome to Resident Speak Out. Is there anything you'd like to say? I'm not. Gunther, we can't hear you.
He is unmuted. Gunther is left. We'll see if he rejoins us in a second.
Yeah, we'll see if he rejoins.
What's his last name?
Gottfeld.
Gottfeld.
Godfeld. Gunther? Gunther, you have to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thanks,
Okay.
Gunther, for joining us.
All right, fine. My name is Gunther Gottfeld. I've lived in Columbia for 50 years. One reason I chose to move here was the presence of community swimming pools. I've used the pools every summer. My children and my grandchildren have used them. Until this summer, I have not been disappointed. However, I am disappointed and I am still angry about the decision to close the outdoor pools while opening facilities that are far less safe. Looking forward, I will not be disappointed if there is a separate pool membership fee. I will not be disappointed if costs go up. I will not be disappointed if the number of swimmings at each pool must be limited due to COVID-19. But I will be very disappointed if even one community pool is closed. Further, should this decision be made in secret behind the backs of residents and without community input, it would be a complete betrayal of the values that Columbia holds most dear. That completes my statement.
Thank you, Gunther. No, don't see anybody in the chat room. Okay, thank you very much. Alex, have you joined us at all? Or Nancy? Nancy Lynn? You both were signed up.
Andy, were they waiting for a call like last time?
No, because we've changed the process. You joined. We actually sent them the link.
Oh, okay.
So you join right in the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
All right. That's all I had on the sign-up sheet. Consent agenda, there is none. Board votes, we're going to talk about the minutes. Jenny, you had a
Yeah, a correction. On page 2 of the minutes, line 101. It's under creating a reserve fund. I spoke against it and voted against it, so I'm just asking that we look at a correction to that.
all right, so we list you as against.
Well,
correct?
I was against it, right? I don't know if the people that are listed as against it, whether one of them may have been for it or not.
Yeah, I think there was some confusion. I believe I voted in favor of it.
You voted in favor. All right, that's probably, if you remember, we had a little bit of technical difficulty
Oh, yeah, no.
at that meeting, but thank you
Right.
for correcting that.
Not a problem. Sherry and I look alike. No, I'm kidding. Never mind. Okay.
All right, with that change, is there a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
So moved.
Second.
Nancy moved. Is it? Okay.
Second.
Ginny
Second.
seconded. Is there any objection? Hearing none, minutes are approved. Thank you. We'll move on then to the discussion. The first item is status report on the fiscal year 2021 operating budget. And Milton, anything you want to add first?
There's a document that was sent to the board, giving a status of our, reflecting the first 5 months of the fiscal year. Susan, Glenn, do you want to walk the board through it, or do you want to address it? Do the board members have any questions?
This is Susan. I'm sorry I was offline there a moment. I presented this last meeting 2 weeks ago, but I had to just do it via sharing my screen. The board members didn't have a copy of it because it was just October 8th. We had just closed the month of September. So I don't have any further presentation prepared, and we don't have any further updates as we're still in the month of October. So this is the most current financial information or update on the FY21 results.
Okay, well, thank you, Susan. Any questions from board members? Remember to please use the chat.
Oh,
So I
oops.
can tell.
I have
Okay.
it.
So Nancy, obviously you must have a question.
I have a whole bunch.
Okay.
First of all, I looked at repairs and maintenance for the fitness clubs was 10,195% over budget. Is that right? There were a lot of numbers like repairs and maintenance under supplies and operating supplies and expenses that were just huge numbers. So I just don't understand how that could be. The athletic club was huge, 7,177%.
So Nancy, the information that was posted and provided does not compare actual to budget. Could you let me know what you're referring to, please?
I'm looking at, well, hold on, because it showed up on a number of pages. Wait, this isn't what I was looking at. In the budget, where am I? Why am I in tonight's? Okay. Well, never mind. Now I have to go look because.
Yeah. Nancy, for tonight's meeting, there was like a 5 or 6 page memo that just had the major departments,
Right.
the organizational summary, the major departments.
Yeah. I don't know where I found it. Oh, I think I clipped. Hold on a sec. Go ahead. Go to somebody else while I'm doing this.
All right.
This is Lynn. I think I can help. Nancy's referring to the variances between in the first quarter
Right.
financial book.
Right.
There were substantial variances in repairs and maintenance between the actual and the budget for the quarter. And I have to say that can happen due to timing and the spread of the budget expenses throughout the various months and throughout the various quarters, especially when we were in sort of a compressed time frame to get the budget revised. We didn't have time to perhaps perfect the monthly budget the way we should have.
Mhm.
But those variances do appear in the first quarter financial book, and the expectation is that by the end of the coming months, it will smooth itself out.
But even like 7,000%.
Well, that's because the budget for the first quarter was so low. It was very low, given the fact that, for example, the clubs were closed for some of that time.
Right.
But that doesn't preclude things from repairs and maintenance from going on when those facilities were closed. So I do believe it's largely a timing issue, though.
It's also supplies and expenses. wasn't just maintenance. It wasn't repairs and just repairs and maintenance. It also included supplies, and even the sports park showed supplies at 1,375%. So I'm sure I'm not understanding something, but whatever that is, I'd really like to understand it, even spread out over a year. And especially with our reduced prices, or I mean, our reducing costs and so on. This just seems like somebody's making a fortune and they're going out and selling it all.
No,
I'm kidding. I'm sure this is not happening, but
No.
it still looks really strange, and I'd love to understand it.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Sure, Dan?
Want to remind that the budget that was approved by the board did not have the majority of the facilities opening until September 1st.
That's true.
That opened, so we budgeted for no business at all in the first quarter. But then we opened on June 20th, all the indoor facilities. Golf ended up opening up in May. The facilities opened, indoor facilities, sports park club, everything opened up at the end of June. So expenses that had been allocated more towards the second quarter had to be incurred in the first quarter when we had budgeted virtually nothing because we anticipated them being empty. So the percentage is huge, but the dollar amount's not. The percentage is just huge because we assumed, as we were instructed by the board, to assume that things weren't going to open until after Labor Day. So it's a big percentage, but it's not a big dollar amount.
Okay. Thank
Right.
you.
And for the sports park, it's literally $1,000 that we're talking about, so.
Thank you. I just wanted to understand that.
All right, Nancy, any other questions?
Yeah. What is member advantage? I know I should know this, but I don't.
So Member Advantage was a program that, where we had tickets, movie passes, tickets to events.
Oh, right. Gotcha.
All good things at discounts that members could buy at discounted prices in the past, but we discontinued that program.
Right. I know that. Okay. Thank you.
Shari?
Yeah, Dan, so my question is, because the board did not budget for the opening, and sports and fitness has incurred expenses, how does that affect the rest of the budget?
Actually, the estimate from, if you look at the first quarter board book, the estimate has us trending ahead of what was budgeted. Because we're able to generate revenue, particularly in golf, which has been
Huge. Yeah.
having its best year in a long time. But even in the balance of managing the expenses, but the incoming revenue at the other facilities, we are trending ahead of where we originally budgeted.
So the revenues that you're bringing in from sports and fitness are being used for sports and fitness?
No, as we discussed before, we put all the money in one bucket and pay our bills.
Right. So would you say that, that this year, despite everything, is still running ahead of last year, for example?
No.
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 We can only compare to budget. You can't compare anything to last year.
Okay, and the budget that you're comparing it to is our much reduced, revised a second time budget.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Although I do take that back. Fairway Hills is trending ahead of last year. Yeah, Fairway Hills is doing really well.
All right, any other questions for Dan? Sorry, for Dan, for Susan, for Lynn on the budget submittal that they gave us. Nope. All right. So I have noticed that Alex joined us. And so if the board does not mind, I would like to give him 3 minutes, kind of as an extended resident speak out. Alex? Alex, are you there? Alex, you're muted.
Yes. You say, Alex, you are muted. We cannot unmute you.
Alex, it's possible it's in the bottom of your screen when you put your mouse on the pictures.
Can we see Alex's picture by any chance? And
He controls that. He controls the camera and the mute function.
Okay. So we can't wave at him and tell him he's muted.
No, I'm sorry.
You can wave at him. He can see you if your camera's on.
We'll come back and see if Alex.
I'm calling him. Hold on.
Yeah. All right. Look.
Hi.
Let's kind of move on. Pre-filed state legislation. If you got the memo, there was none. So the next item we have is a presentation about the Howard County Housing Opportunities Task Force. Milton, if you anything you want to start off with?
No, Kristen is up and ready to go.
Yep, I'm here,
Okay.
and Jessica's here as well, but I'll get things rolling here. As you all know, we did include some information about the Housing Opportunities Task Force in your packages for this week. Sorry, my computer is just not cooperating at the moment. Okay, so the Housing Opportunities Task Force was created to assess the state of housing in Howard County, and they will assist in the preparation of the housing opportunities. They will create a housing opportunities master plan, and that will work in conjunction with the general plan. So the Housing Opportunities Master Plan will establish strategy and direction. It will recommend policy changes. It will identify ways to create and preserve housing for people at all income levels. And it will provide metrics and timelines to measure this progress. And then the general plan will take this Housing Opportunities Master Plan. It'll take those recommendations and apply them. It'll apply them to individual neighborhoods and so forth. So it's really looking for overarching housing issues and policies. And they've identified 3 challenges. That is that the housing supply has not kept up with demand, that there is a lack of affordable housing, and consequently, that inhibits integration racially, socioeconomically, and so forth, and that new development today is less diverse than the housing inventory overall. So in other words, there's a predominance currently of the construction of rental apartments, and even the for sale market is building larger homes, which doesn't meet every household's needs. Now there are 4 topics that I wanted to go over with you and hopefully get some feedback from you on, so that I can share these concerns with the task force.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You okay?
Yes, please
Okay.
continue.
Okay. So there are 4 topics that I wanted to share with you and try to get some feedback on. The first is senior housing, and the task force, pretty obviously wants to ensure that senior housing is available, and they are also looking at the size of that housing. Will larger housing be available? and incentivizing construction that's more senior friendly just across the board. So that would be things like, accessible homes with wider doors, accessible kitchens, and so forth. The second topic is new development and redevelopment. And again, this goes back to the challenge that the housing supply doesn't meet the demand. And is the land that is being developed in a way that is most effective? So in other words, are big parcels being developed with just one big house? Or would it be preferable to develop them with several, or even more than several units to help meet the demand of the housing demand? The third topic that I want to bring up with you is affordable housing. And there's a question here as to whether the priority should be to create as many units as possible. And oftentimes that's done by charging the developers a fee in lieu because they need to, make money. Or should the focus be on integration? In other words, blending affordable units into the larger development community. And that generally the developer would be responsible for, but it does not necessarily result in enough units to meet the county's goals and needs. And then the fourth issue is just the regulations and land use policy that goes around this conversation. Some ideas that are being discussed are to have more by right development in areas with more poverty. That seems to be where the task force is leaning, but I'd like your feedback on that. Other issues that have come up are to take individual codes and revise them to make them less restrictive when the use being developed is affordable housing. So that might mean reducing requirements such as parking or setbacks in order to make it easier to fit, to accommodate affordable housing on these properties. And another possibility that has come up in discussion is to create an affordable housing overlay throughout the county. Where would that happen? How would it happen? Those are details that haven't been worked out yet, but it's a concept that is also at a minimum up for discussion. So I'm not quite sure how to guide your response to all of this information that I just threw at you, but I would really like to get some feedback from the board so that as Jessica and I have opportunities to engage with the county and the task force, we can represent your desires. And I think at this point, we're not looking for specific requests, but more overarching general priorities from you. Because at this point, we're not going to be able to influence zoning changes or anything like that right now. That might come later at the time of the general plan, or even later when there's a zoning rewrite. But we want to be able to express the board's sentiments, at least generally, and do so accurately. So I'm here to listen to anything that you can throw at me that will help us convey your priorities to the county.
And Kristen, I'm just going to jump in real quick. One of the reasons we wanted to get this on your agenda tonight is that the Housing Task Force is moving slightly ahead of where we are in our visioning sessions. So they're going to propose their recommendations in a final public meeting in November. And then in December, we anticipate that they will finalize those recommendations that will go into the final report that then goes into the general plan process. And that obviously is going to be ahead of where we are at as an organization in meeting our consensus So it just helps us to understand concerns or priorities that you have as a board so that we can speak to those concerns as part of this process.
Okay, Dick, Alan, Milton, and Jenny, let's go. Dick, get comments first.
I think our top priority is to make sure that whatever plan is developed, that it's going to work and it's going to happen. Currently, we've got this in lieu fees thing, and it doesn't happen. The money piles up someplace, and we're not getting any affordable housing. So I really am interested in, I think, forcing developers to set aside a certain amount of affordable housing or workforce housing is the only way we're going to get affordable housing scattered around the county. And let's get rid of this fees in lieu. That's a joke.
So I think for tonight, I'd like to do some follow-up questions just so that we make sure we fully understand these concepts as you talk about them. Dick, when you talk about the fee in lieu, a lot of times fee in lieu can actually lead to more affordable housing units being done and better projects in terms of, because you can just throw money at it. But those can be interfered with by other regulatory or development process that stop that kind of development, or where those developments can't compete with market rate. So I just want to challenge that it's not necessarily the fee in lieu that's creating the problem where we're not seeing affordable housing actually being developed, but us knowing that your priority is that you want affordable housing to happen helps us give that feedback to what systems need to be tweaked to ensure that they do happen, either through inclusionary of units in development that's ongoing, or through a fee in lieu program that can actually function if the one currently is not functioning, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And I don't want to pick out fee in lieu as the villain. It's just that we're not seeing anything happening with fee in lieu. And we also, when we have the fee in lieu, we don't get the geographic dispersion of housing that we really need. The Rousean ideal is integrated neighborhoods, socially, economically, racially. And if every development is forced to put in some affordable housing, whether it's subsidized or what, that helps solve the problem. That way we actually get something done instead of some pie in the sky, stack of money that doesn't get used.
Okay, Alan?
So I'll pick up.
This is Alice. Can you hear me?
Alan?
Yeah.
Do you want to go with Alex, or do you want me to go?
No, you go first. I'll bring Alex in a little later.
Okay. I'll pick up where Dick left off, because I was going to begin with the plan. The plan was to have economic integration within Columbia. That's what's most important. It's most important that, I'm not speaking to the rest of Howard County, and I'm certainly in favor. I'm not in favor of this process ending up with one set of guidelines that cover Columbia and the rest of Howard County. So I think Columbia needs to maintain its unique plan nature. And so the plan was to be integrated, and that's what we need to have. I agree that fees in lieu are a way around that and should be avoided. I can make up scenarios where they might be helpful, but I certainly don't want to say, because I'm a huge affordable housing advocate, that therefore that translates to being in support of fees in lieu. I'm not. I'm also aware that often happens with these situations that whoever gets to frame the discussion wins. If you can frame the terms of the argument, you win. And so I don't accept the argument that developers can't do mixed income affordable housing, full spectrum housing within their development. So I think if we had that requirement and stuck to it, Columbia is sufficiently attractive that developers would be here, stay here, and want to be part of it and make it happen. What I hear from developers and other business community people all the time is, all we want is stability. All we want is stability. We just need that stability. Fine. have stability. Stability is we have mixed income development around here. That's what ought to be happening. And I will say that although I probably don't fully understand what it means from a professional's point of view, anytime I hear the word of by right development, it scares the living bejesus out of me, because my experience is every time I encounter that phrase, it's a way of saying residents, the Columbia plan, have no standing. We just, the developer has a right to do it, and we get nothing to say about it. And so I'm never in favor of expanding that. Thanks.
Alan, just to clarify on the by right term in the planning world, what that really means is that it's been pre-approved because it meets all of the regulatory criteria in every capacity. So if you don't like what the regulatory capacity is producing, it's about changing the regulations, not about needing to change the by right nature of it.
I hear you, except that I also have consistently said that for Columbia, one of the regulations needs to be a more subjective one around how this fits with the plan. And and what I keep hearing from the county is, as long as it fits by the terms of the letter of the law and the regulations, it goes ahead, even if it doesn't fit with any plan. And that's not acceptable to me within Columbia.
Milton.
Andy, the only question I have is for Kristen and Jessica, because I'm a little confused by this. I thought we were just updating the board. I feel like right now, I guess, what are we looking for from the board? Are we looking for a statement from the board of directors, or can we provide the individual board members with the questions and let them respond? Because I feel like we are drafting a document at a board meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I was hoping just to get, some high level feedback as to what their inclinations are in terms of the housing priorities. If this is if doing so at this moment is too time consuming, I can certainly send out an email to the board. There's just a little bit of a time crunch because of the date of the next Housing Opportunities Task Force meeting.
Yes, I would prefer us doing that, because right now, because if you're saying your comments are representing the CA board, that to me, that indicates a connotation that there has to be a vote, because we've heard from 2 board members, but that's only 2 of the 10 voting board members. So I'd rather, if I may suggest that we send the questions immediately to the board, to the 10 board members, with a timeline to respond to them, and then we take it when we take it to the meeting. We say, if we can, these are comments from the CA board members, not so much the representing the CA board.
Okay.
Yeah, and I would also just like to say, your packet material that was sent out in the presentation does a really good job of overviewing the recommendations that the task force is considering making as policy changes in Howard County. So I think what we were hoping to get tonight or in the next week is an idea of what your feelings on those are, like what your sentiments or concerns might be, because these are very nuanced, robust discussions that we could probably spend 24 hours discussing straight and still not get at the heart of it. And so we don't want to have a policy statement or a strong stance. We just want to get an idea of what your feedback is on these, so that we can make sure that those concerns are being voiced properly. It's not really about wanting a vote from the board.
Okay, I mean, that makes sense, and we'll definitely look for the email.
I'll send an email as soon as we hang up.
Okay, Andy, I was next. If I could just ask 2 clarifying questions.
Sure, if you have clarifying questions, we can certainly take those.
Right.
Jenny.
Okay. One, if maybe staff could, Kristen and Jessica, could send the board something so it's very clear what fee in lieu means, because quite frankly, the money has been used. It's been used to develop affordable housing. It's just where it's been used is really the issue. And so, the point is whether you correct that or you actually insist that the development must be on site, like Maple Lawn, River Hill, et cetera, that hasn't occurred. And the other thing is location, 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 as the realtors on the board understand. What I'd like some explanation about in terms of the affordable housing, where my understanding of what's been happening so far is we're talking about location in the metropolitan area, and I think we need to educate the board on that. So we keep saying Howard County, but that, in my opinion, or I guess the question is that true? Or are we really talking about, most people are talking about, let's have more affordable housing for Howard County, but let's locate it in the metropolitan water and sewer area. And then the next question is how much land is really not developed and available for that? Because that's the area, especially east of 29, that's been heavily developed already. So, what's the reality test on the number of affordable housing units that are needed and where they're planning on locating them? So thank you.
All right, well, next would be Shari. And Shari, any questions you want to ask of?
Yes. And I do appreciate, Kristen and Jessica, you're bringing this to the board because I think the timeline is very crunched, and I appreciate that. So I think this is very helpful. My question, one of my questions was about, you talked about affordable housing overlay. What does that term mean?
An overlay would mean that the zoning of the site remains as is, whatever it is right now, but there would be an opportunity to apply different zoning standards for this specific use on that property, and they might set certain conditions for that being permitted, or it would just say in this or whatever in this zone you have to follow the zoning standards, but if you were to build affordable housing, there are some different standards that would apply to you.
Okay, so it's almost like setting aside a variance that would apply if you meet certain criteria.
Well, it would just be changing the requirements if you were to build affordable housing. It might say that the setbacks are different or something.
And the underlying purpose of an overlay zone is to allow for more affordable housing projects to be located in more diverse areas than they are currently allowed under the current zoning, because you're trying to make sure that the zoning regulations target the exact policy that you're trying to promote rather than being attributed to all different kinds of zoning.
Okay, so that helps me so that it's more focused.
Yeah, it's about focusing the development you want where you want it, rather than saying I have a piece of land, I can build 5 different things. And we're saying, no, we want you to build affordable housing under these criteria for how you would build it.
Okay, so that might make it easier for developers to do that type of thing. I mean, that's the idea. Is that it's an incentive. In some way, it's an incentive. Okay. I just wanted to comment. I think when you say full spectrum housing, that is a different way of conceptualizing. When people hear affordable housing, there's a lot of baggage that comes along with it. But if you say full spectrum housing, that is representative of the underlying assumption of inclusion and expanded access. So that might be something we want to take a look at. Can we address the issue in a slightly different way by calling it full spectrum housing, which brings in middle income? And I think there are very few people that realize that middle income housing is very difficult in Howard County right now. And I'm, sort of hearing that more and more for people, that there are young families that are really having difficulty because they just can't even make the minimum for single-family homes.
Sorry, just so you know, the Housing Task Force has identified that as an issue and they're aware of it and developing policies to address it.
Okay, so it's not just low-income housing that we're talking about. We're talking about that full spectrum. Okay, that's great. I had one other question. The question about fee and lieu, I also agree that it's important to have blended housing. I think that's one of the things that really, of the cities that I've lived in, what separates the successes from the failures is that blended housing allows everyone to live in a community without any kind of stigma being attached to a particular place or a particular school. And I think that that is really, really important, that we don't want to fall into the older urban pattern of segregating low-income housing in a particular place. I think we've learned over the last 30 to 40 years that that really does not work very well. So I would really like to see the county moving in a more progressive direction in favor of integrated and blended housing.
Nancy, any questions for?
This isn't so much a question as it is just a little information that you might want to check out, but Enterprise Housing is going to do some of that housing that Sherry just spoke of, which is going to include affordable and market rate, and it's going to be in Wild Lake. You might want to check into that. They're going to double the number of units that are in the that one area, and I can't think of the name of it, but it's just on the corner where you turn into Wild Lake High School.
Daystar Court, I think.
Nancy, we're checking that.
It's beyond Daystar.
We're all over that.
It's beyond Daystar Court.
All right, Lynn, and
It's near the Interfaith Center.
Right.
let's
Yeah.
try to focus
But also
on
in Harper's
questions.
Choice, it's the same thing they're doing.
Let's focus on if you have any questions, because everyone will get a survey. We'll get a set of questions from Kristen and Jessica, and then we can give our individual opinions. So, try to focus right now, and if you need some particular information in order to help you fill out the questions. Lynn?
Yeah. When we talk about economic diversity, and I know it's critical to, I think, all of our thinking about Columbia, how do we bring in a full spectrum of diversity right now? We have a lot of areas where, especially in the older villages, where again the prices are lower than many of the newer villages. How do we get the economic diversity in some of the older villages on the higher end to sort of make that whole area more diverse? Is that anything that we're looking at? Or are we only looking at workforce, moderate income, which is what we need? But how do we look at the whole? Are we looking at the whole area with the whole range of economic possibilities?
All right, and Renee?
I just had a question about how they are bringing the larger community into this discussion. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, there are, let me find there is a link that was looking for my memo, was on the memo that I sent out. And let me click on that now to convey to you. There are meetings, and on November 2nd is a community meeting
Okay.
That you could, if you go to the link on the memo that I included, there will eventually at least be a link to join that meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Shari, another question?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had another question. I just couldn't find it.
Sure.
When the presentation, the materials that you sent talked about different types of housing. Has the task force been looking at different types of housing in terms of things like duplexes or co-housing, or even, for example, in Portland, Oregon, they're experimenting with small villages of tiny houses that can be moved and that are particularly in demand by young people, by millennials. Has that come up in the discussion?
Yes. It's part of their recommendations overall is to look at the types of housing that are being provided. That's not just affordable, that's all kinds. And that includes looking at reducing the minimum square footage requirements that are required for housing, not just for tiny houses, but other forms of it. It's a really complicated discussion. I don't think we can get into it tonight.
Okay, if you could just send any kind of links to that, that would be helpful too. Thank you.
All right, Ginny, do you have a question? Ginny, are you muted?
I know, this takes a second. Are they looking at any suggestions for the village centers, like perhaps, and actually, Sherry, you and I are on the same wavelength. I had a note about tiny homes. There's some area where perhaps that would make sense in terms of it's also what Lynn said, we're getting to ownership then, but it's more affordable ownership, and it's actually for all ages. I think if we listen to what Sherry said and what Lynn said, I think we really have the beginning of a policy that makes a lot of sense for Howard County. I hate to limit us to Columbia because Howard County has a responsibility too for affordable housing. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll reiterate, we're going to get a list of questions and please respond back to Kristen and Jessica. Probably need to do it by next Tuesday, right? Would that be good?
There's a meeting on November 2nd, but it would be best if you could, yes. Your deadline makes more sense so that Jessica and I can formulate some more, we can collate everything that you send to us.
Right, so your deadline is going to be next Tuesday.
Yep, that sounds good.
Respond back to Kristen and Jessica. And I do have one question that came up because I didn't quite understand the overlay district. And I think you may have to try to send some more information out about that because I am very unclear about the overlay district. What I didn't understand, I mean, if you apply an overlay district to the entire county, then to me it says, well, then you can put housing in any place. M1, just pick your favorite. And so I don't sure if that's what they really mean when they talk about that. And then the second thing is with an overlay district, I mean, does it override the underlying zoning? As an example, if you're zoned for 4 houses per acre, okay, can you suddenly via the overlay district put townhouses in? Because and that's what I don't understand. I don't quite understand how the overlay district functions with the zoning. So if you could just give some clarification, I would appreciate that.
Okay.
All right. I want to thank you all. Thank you very much for the briefing. It was very interesting, a lot of good information, and for keeping the board up to date, because as you said, this has kind of like come up pretty quickly.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for your attention.
Okay. And now, Alex.
Yeah.
Alex
Can you hear me?
Thank you for waiting. I'm sorry. We seem to have had some problems there getting you unmuted. So Alex, go ahead.
Yes. You can hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. There was a technical glitch where I wasn't able to unmute. Perhaps your IT staff could look into that, because if I'm having the problem, perhaps others are having the same. My question is, are you still planning to have a closed meeting tonight?
A closed work session, it is proposed, Alex. I don't know whether it'll occur.
Okay.
Vote.
I think it's alarmed a lot of people, because people were pleased that you got off to a really good start in the budget process, but now it's kind of sad to see that closing the meeting could tarnish the entire process by shutting out the public. People would be deprived of knowing what staff tells you, and people would be deprived of being able to either accept or challenge staff's statements and recommendations. The closed meeting would severely undermine the transparency and the trust that you've said you value. And as you know, CA is not like a private business that can keep information from its employees and the general public. CA is very different. CA's governing documents state that CA is a nonprofit civic organization, not a business. If CA were a business, then it would not be able to impose an annual charge on all property owners in Columbia. But since it does impose the annual charge under state law, CA has a special obligation to make its meetings and operations transparent to the lien payers. I've personally already seen a lot of significant problems with the initial financial material that you've received thus far, which could affect your conclusions. Plus, it seems way too premature for staff recommendations when their initial material really hasn't been vetted by the village associations and the public. Also, people deserve to know in open session right off the bat if the staff's current recommendations align with the documented funding priorities of the broad cross-section of Columbia's residents. Has staff respected your need to see their presentation in advance of the closed meeting, just like you receive information in advance for open meetings? Because if not, it puts you at a severe disadvantage by forcing you to digest the information on the fly and to make snap judgments during the meeting. Minds could already be influenced during that meeting. And all this happens without a public record of it and without public vetting of the information. There's an impression that you've been given that you have no choice but to close the meeting. But all we see are some reasons that might vaguely sound good on paper, but the actual discussion at the meeting likely will drift and won't meet the state's interpretation of its requirements for closing meetings. And once you close it, you could very well find that you're trapped into a discussion that is primarily about budget priorities and directions, which is a topic that should have truly been discussed in open session. But by then it's too late. The public's already been shut out. So come on, you're all good people. And to paraphrase the words of the late Congressman Elijah Cummings, you're better than this. Don't go through with a closed meeting tonight. Watch the final presidential debate. Reschedule your budget discussion as an open meeting. Let the sunshine in.
Alan.
Alex actually answered my question in the last part of what he said. Thank you.
All right. Let me remind people that on October 29th, there is the first budget work session for the fiscal year 22 budget. It is open. It will be streamed 7 to 9. The information will probably come out. I think the agenda will come out tomorrow. And I think some of the information will be posted also, but it'll all be posted by the time we have the budget discussion on the 29th. So put that on your calendars and make sure you have it. As I said, it will be it's an open work session on the 2022 budget, and it will be live streamed. All right. Thanks, Alex.
Okay.
Next up, we have chair's report. So the chair submitted his report in writing. And the only thing I want to add is I had an opportunity to attend the dedication of the Vivian Bailey Neighborhood Center Park down at the lakefront this morning. It was very nice. Calvin Ball was there, Greg Fitchett, Milton, and the head of the Veterans Commission, and Millie, of course. In case you don't know, at 102, she did her parachute jump. And they actually presented her with a framed photo of her in the air as she's going down from the parachute jump. But I wanted to say there were some really good speeches. And I really wanted to thank Milton because I thought Milton gave a very good speech that really tied it in both with his upbringing and with Millie. But if you get a chance, the park is open down there. There are already kids playing on it. It is really, really great. And it was a by invitation only event that was handed out by HRD in the county because of COVID restrictions. They wanted it very, very carefully limited, and it was very carefully limited. So if you get a chance, go down and see the park. It's open now. Any questions on Chair's report?
Yes.
Jenny?
Yeah. You may have just answered my question in terms of the limitations, but in reading the chairman's remarks October 16th, I didn't see anything about this on the October 22nd line about this, and I would have loved to have gone down. As you know, Vivian is, well, an old friend, but she's also a resident of Vantage Point, and I would have loved to have been there. Maybe others would have, but maybe that was the problem, that none of the board members, or maybe I'm the only one that didn't know about it on the board. I think it would have been good if if communications would let the whole board know about these things. Anyway, thank you.
Sure. By the way, that's one of the problems when you submit your report a week in advance and late minute things happen. But Milton.
Yes, in response to Jenny, communications could not have notified the board. It was a last minute invitation. It came strictly to the individuals with the statement that it was going to be limited, and communication didn't have the discretion. I didn't have the discretion to share it.
Andy?
All right. Oh,
it was announced in the Meriwether Post the day before.
Okay, well.
And I would have gone, except it's too early in the morning for me, but yeah, it had been announced. And I think everybody should make sure they're on the subscription list to that, because they're doing a pretty good job of getting that kind of information out.
Now, wait a minute. We have to start reading blogs to know what's going on. I got a real problem with that.
All right.
Well, you gotta find your information where you can.
Yeah. All right. President's report.
Wait a minute, Nancy's up in there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I don't know why you keep missing me, but I'm going to start.
I thought there was a different discussion. I'm sorry. Nancy?
I understand that it was a last minute thing, and I can certainly appreciate that it was limited, but I also understand that Andy could have taken, and I'm sorry, Andy, but I'm directing this at you. You had not informed the board, and you know I have a serious issue with communication. You could have informed the board that this was happening and explained that the board was not invited, but only a very limited number of people, and we would all feel a whole lot better about it. But not being informed and then being told after the fact, I think is simply rude.
Okay. Alan?
She said, plus we could have sent our regards, sent statements, and been represented even if we couldn't be there in body.
All right. Let's move on. Chairman's report. President's report. Any questions for Milton? He submitted in writing.
Andy, I just have one quick question. As I was reading through, it said that the ice rink, I guess this is a question for Dan or Milton. Will hockey teams be playing? The ice rink is now open, apparently. There are Wednesday sessions. Are hockey teams going to be playing, or are they still restricted?
Hockey and the figure skating was actually was first before we opened it to the public, and in very controlled circumstances. They paid to operate it and helped us get it open so we could open it when it was ready for the public. So the hockey has already been active, following all the appropriate state guidelines, federal guidelines, as well as the USA Hockey guidelines for practices and scrimmages in games.
All right, so are we renting the ice rink to the hockey teams?
Yes, we always have.
Okay, and is figure skating open as well?
Yes.
Okay, so we are getting a revenue stream from the ice rink?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on Milton's report? All right, report from Inner Arbor Trust. The report was submitted in writing. Any questions for Lynn? Just remind everyone, November 2nd, you all have an invitation to the meeting where Inner Arbor Trust is going to reveal their new concept. Jenny. And okay.
Okay, sorry. Could we have that sent out again, because I had heard that not many board members responded, and I think it may have been sent when we had so many emails going out, but this is a really important meeting, and I'll turn it over to Lynn.
Yeah, I'll be glad to forward the invitation again to everybody tonight. But this is the concept, and we're really excited about it. It was a very collaborative process, encompassed a lot of people, including Dick and Janet, and I think you'll be very interested in seeing what we're going to try to do with the park next. It's a revised concept for the times.
Shari?
No, I was just going to say that, so apparently that meeting is at the same time as the housing group that we were told about. November 2nd. That's the way it goes. But I think that that's going to make it difficult for anybody to take place, to do anything with the housing group. So maybe we can just get some feedback from Kristen and Jessica about that.
And I suspect also that given it's probably a county meeting, you can submit comments. You can probably submit, written comments via email.
Well,
so
is it exactly the same time, guys? We should just check that. It may be different times.
We can check.
Yeah.
Yeah, we normally have our meeting. That's our regular meeting date. We normally start at 6. We're starting at 7 just because some people thought it would be easier. We could, if the county meetings at 7, maybe we could go back to starting at 6 if that would help.
Is Kristen still on and Jessica still on the line, and maybe they could tell us what time the county meeting is? Oh, well.
Well, Jenny, if I may, Jenny, if you go in the chat box, there's a link to the calendar, and it should show you when the time for that meeting on the 2nd of November.
Alan?
I appreciate, Lynn, your willingness to think about moving it to earlier. I will say that's the way it goes as an answer doesn't sit well with me. If it's intended to be a joint meeting, then something needs to happen to ensure that it's a meeting time that's amenable to the joint bodies.
Anything else? All right. Financial reports and updates, none. Tracking forms, any questions on tracking forms? All right, proposed new topics. Anything?
Yeah, Andy?
Ginny.
Yeah, there is one that, and thank God Janet's not, Evans isn't here tonight because she would kill me for not filling out the form, which I will do. I'm not sure the feasibility of this idea, but I've been thinking about the concern that CA wasn't able to receive any CARES money, any funding from the feds because of our status. I'm wondering if we should be exploring the feasibility of either setting up another group that could accept gifts, funds, etc., as under CA, or we look at our own 501(c)(4) and decide whether that really makes sense anymore. I don't know the answer, but it may be something we want to take on.
Well, make sure you write it up.
I will, because Janet will be very unhappy if I don't.
Yes. All right. Alan.
Just a question for Ginny then, because I thought that some of the villages got money, and aren't they set up the same way we are?
I don't think the villages got CARES money.
Dollars, no.
Okay. I certainly can't have lost track of the alphabet soup of the different funding sources. Thank you.
I think Congress actually included in the law a prohibition from giving 501s. Milton would know more and Sherry would know more.
Well, the dollars, if I may, the dollars from the CARES Act specifically went to 501(c)(3) organizations because 501(c)(4)s and 501(c)(6)s were not eligible for those dollars.
There are two, this is Jackie, there are two types of grants that some of the villages did get, even as C4s, and the reason that they could receive them and we couldn't is because of their size, because they're smaller than us.
Thanks.
That's right, the number of employees, yeah.
And we did, as we've shared with the board in the past, we did receive one $10,000 grant, which we were eligible for.
All right. Any other topic?
The past, I'm talking about the potential for receiving state, federal, county grant and other donations for different specific projects for CA, as opposed to always relying on membership and the lien. It's just an idea, whatever.
Submit the form, Jenny. All right, anything else? All right, we're on to talking points. Let's see, I don't think we have any talking points.
Well, at least if we don't have them present this evening, we'll have some.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Bonnie. Yes.
Okay, I was using the gadget attached to my ears, and that button didn't work. Okay, we only had one talking point. The board voted for corrections to minutes from the board meeting on September 24th. Ginny asked that page 2, line 101 should indicate her vote as against. And Sherry also asked that hers from line 102 should be 4.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
No problem.
All right. I think we're done with the meeting.
Well, don't we have to agree that we're having a closed meeting or not, that we're having a closed meeting later?
Yep, we do have to decide whether we want to have a closed work session or not. Technically, the invitation went out for 9:30.
Can we get some information about the topic to see where we are about voting?
Milton?
Well, it's not so much I can provide information about the topic. That's why I asked for a closed meeting. We have an agenda covering the reasons why I'm seeking a closed meeting. And frankly, that's about as far as I can go, Nancy.
Is it about the budget?
No, it's not about the budget specifically. And it's basically about that understanding that we're starting the budget process. We're looking at, and not just for 22, but going on, but it's more focused about ideas for the organizational structure, the functions of the program. And as I said, I don't want to get into trying to explain so much. I was hoping to rely on the provisions that would allow us to go into a closed session. If the board members feel that that's not sufficient, then that's the board decision.
All right, so what Milton's asked for is a closed work session to talk about the organization. Let me see here.
Can we
Says
find out how
under,
much time, what the timing of this would be?
1 hour.
Okay, because I'm going to have to leave in about half an hour.
And it would be, he asked it to be closed for discussion of matters pertaining to employees and personnel and consideration of the terms and conditions of business transaction. Alan, okay, remember, we got to focus on whether we're going to have an open or closed meeting, not what's in the meeting.
That's absolutely what I want to talk about. So I'm very clear. Almost anything we decide has impacts on our personnel. We decide to close the tennis bubble and create a new tennis center. That has impacts on personnel. If we decide not to do that, that has impacts on personnel. I frankly, and I have not heard that there's any particular business transaction that's on the table for us to talk about. I would personally love to have the discussion that I'm so pleased that Milton and his staff has talked about ideas for the future. And I would love to have that discussion. And to me, that's an open public discussion. There is no personnel discussions have to do with talking about a particular individual or something's going on with a particular personnel member. I absolutely believe those should be private and closed. But any discussion that simply might have some impact on some of our personnel, because we might decide to just lay out a weird one that I would never vote for. We're going to sell off all our open space, so therefore all our open space people will go away. That's part of the discussion of the future of CA. That's the future of Columbia. That should never be behind closed doors. And unless we have a particular business transaction to talk about a proposal, then that shouldn't be behind closed doors either. And I will just say that I'm going to listen to other people talking about it. But if I can't be moved off of those positions, to me, this is not just a question of a decision I disagree with. This would be a decision for an illegal meeting, and I will not be a party to an illegal meeting.
Jenny.
Andy? I'm sorry.
Yes. Jenny?
Okay. All right. There are 3 things I thought the board agreed to. One being to ask the staff, and these are very professional people that head departments, head the organizations, to come up with looking at what CA should look like for FY remainder of FY21, FY22, and maybe even look into FY23, okay? That was the charge, and then that would result in an operational and a capital budget. I found that exciting approach. I think that's the way to go, and it's their opinion. We really should not be stepping into this at this point and saying, we agree, we don't agree, because step 2 has not occurred. Once step 1 occurs and we get the capital and operational budget from the professional staff, then we have public input. That's step 2. And we listen to the public, which includes all types of stakeholders. Then step 3 in February is the board makes a final decision on at least the FY22 budget. To me, that has to happen. To go to a meeting where we will hear the professional opinions of perhaps how we will look or reorganize, etc., is exciting, except it should not be done in a closed meeting. I welcome hearing it, but it should not be done in a closed meeting because board members will react, and they cannot react at this point. They cannot say, you cannot do this, or, oh, you should do this. That is without having public input, and that is wrong. So that's what the dilemma I have. I cannot support a closed meeting on this issue. I think it has to be open, but it should be open because it's exciting. Thank you.
Jess.
Yeah, no, you had said at the last meeting or work session that you were going to talk to Sherry about whether she felt that what we were going to discuss met the guidelines for a closed meeting. Did you do that? Did she agree with that?
Now, I did not have a conversation with Sherry because this is a work effort that I have been working with a small group of the senior leadership team. It's a top to bottom look, and it's significant. I guess, Andy, okay. I don't want to make this a big issue because I thought I was trying to do a good thing. What you're going to see, the recommendations that I was going to bring to the board will be reflected in the draft operating budget that the board will receive on the 8th of January. It's just, as I said, we're in major times, significant times, and there's going to be some significant changes. I was just trying to give the board a heads up so you would not be seeing it at the first time. But if that's the case, you want to move forward, then you have a draft budget that's coming to you on January the 8th, and you will see some of the recommendations and probably more because this still is a work in progress. So as I said, we don't have to belabor this, Andy. If the board does not believe this is a topic for a closed session, then I can accept that, and we can just continue with our efforts to present a draft budget, send out a draft budget that will go to the board and the community on January the 8th.
All right. Well, let me just go in the sense of the board.
Can I ask something first?
Renee was in first, and then Nancy. Renee, everything?
So I'm just a little bit confused. If it's okay to discuss it in public in January, why is it not okay to discuss it in public now?
Because, Renee, there are conversations that we haven't had yet, internally and externally, and that's why as I said, it's still a work in progress. All I was trying to do, everyone, is present some. It's not for the board to see this the first time and so you can be prepared for it, because it's going to be a major changes that we're looking at because we're in significant times. But if you're comfortable with that, we will proceed drafting a budget and having those conversations and making those decisions in time for that draft budget.
All right.
May I finish?
All right. I thought you were finished, Renee.
No, I'm sorry. I apologize, Andy. I guess I'm concerned that you are unwilling to have this discussion in public.
I cannot do that, Renee. It's simply
I understand.
Okay, remember, the focus here is whether we want to have a closed work session. People, please.
I understand, Andy, but if the board wants to have a public meeting, wants this meeting to be public, we are his boss. So he's telling us that it's either in private or it's not at all.
Renee, I'm not telling you that. I'm telling you that basically the recommendations and the changes that I would be recommended, they will be reflected in the draft budget, which will be a budget going to the board and the public. I'm saying that we're still working on that document. All I was trying to do is give the boards a heads up of some of those changes that are going to be made. I haven't had all the conversations. Yes, it sounds like I'm getting ahead of myself. I thought I was trying to do a good thing. We will.
Okay. Let's go. Yeah, come on. We're going to have to do this real fast here. Decide. Nancy and Dick, they haven't talked yet.
I'd like to be collaborative here, and I would like to work and find a compromise. Is it possible for us to begin a closed meeting, and after the first 5 or 10 minutes, we feel that this was a mistake, then we can just say, let's open this meeting, and give Milton, our president, the opportunity to express to the board what it is he's trying to tell us. I think that he deserves our respect and our time. And if we don't agree with the topic, then we can say we think we should open the meeting. I'm willing to try that.
All right, Dick.
Well, if this is not something that he's made all the conversations on, then he doesn't have anything to tell us. So I'm willing to wait till he's willing to tell us, until he's taken all his conversations and making his notes and is ready to make a proposal. And I don't want to just, putz around tonight when I got a must-see TV event I've got to go to.
We all want to see it.
All right. Let me just do a quick poll. So, who's in favor of having the closed work session after this meeting?
Andy,
Yes.
the meeting that we're in was scheduled to go till 8:45, so we're actually well ahead of time. I'm not clear why you're cutting off. You have 2 or 3 people who asked to speak. I'm not clear why you're cutting off.
Remember, the purpose of this was to try to decide if the board wanted a closed work session.
Right.
And all I hear is topics, discussion on what's going on inside it's just a question of, do you want to work a closed work session?
That's not what I've been hearing. I've been hearing people discuss whether this ought to be closed or open.
All right. Alan, you want to weigh in?
Actually, I think Susan's been trying to speak, and
Right.
just looked
Well,
at the
I'm
chat.
happy to let Susan speak, but I've also been trying to speak before a couple of other people who've already spoken, but I'm happy to let Susan speak first.
Okay, sorry, Alan.
All right. Alan was first and then Susan.
I'm happy to let Susan go before me. She has not had a chance to speak yet.
Susan? Susan?
Yeah, so I just, we do have some transactions that need to be addressed. I think that those things CA's position needs to be developed before we would share them with the other parties. And I think it would be helpful for you to have some time to think about those things. And also for the matters related to employees and personnel, I just think that it is very clear that these are personnel matters and that people's lives and livelihoods are impacted, and perhaps it would be unnecessarily if that they would be have some months of anxiety if it was decided that not to proceed with these things, and we decided that it wasn't a good idea. So I just would ask you to consider, your residents, the residents who work for CA. I think there's quite a number. They're your constituents too, and they've been through a really tough time, and I don't think their anxiety should be.
Susan, I hear your concern for the staff, and I share it. And and they're also big people, and I think it'd be worse to have closed door discussions and all of a sudden come out with them. And other thing that the closed meeting approach doesn't acknowledge is that we ought to be influenced by the residents. We need to hear from the residents so we can take their thoughts and ideas into consideration, not the other way around, not come out with it and, you say, we might decide not to go through it. Well, part of our decision not to go through with something might be how the residents, which would include, as you say, as well as other stakeholders like staff, how they weigh in. I agree with you, Milton. This is a good set of discussions, and I have no problem, and maybe it's a personality type thing, I have no problem having discussions about incomplete information as long as we're just all clear it's incomplete information. Here's the next step. I'm going to have these conversations, those conversations, but I want you to know where we are now, and let's just get a sense of it. And so I really am with Renee. You're hearing from several members of the board this ought to be done in the open, and you're saying, no, I refuse to do so. I see you shake. I hate you refusing to do so. I don't think that bodes well.
Well, it is what it is, Alan. I cannot do that. It would be unethical.
You choose not to do that.
No, it would be unethical. I'm the president and the CEO of this organization. All I'm saying is that I've been working for many years, and when I found myself in the past and having to make very tough organizational decisions, and every one of those cases, whether it's been a city or an association or other non-for-profit, I have gone to the governing body to give them a heads up. That's all I'm trying to do, is that there's some major decisions that have to be made. And I can wait. I can reflect. They will be reflected in the draft budget. All I'm trying to do is give the board, I didn't want the board to see it for the first time.
I appreciate that, and we have to follow the law.
Okay, that's fine. I'll accept that, Alan.
Ginny, and then Shari, and then Lynn.
Yeah, I hear what Susan's saying, and that certainly is a big concern for all of us. These are our people, and they're all, at least everybody I've interacted with are phenomenal people. We've already lost some, and we have others that are kind of in limbo. This is a tragedy for CA for the last year, and may continue. I think the problem here is this is no different from the county budget, the state budget, other budgets, where at some point you make decisions about reorganizing, etc. But this is subject to public input. What we're being asked to do tonight, repeatedly, is to make a decision without public input by saying, oh no, I hear what you're saying, but you can't do that. Well, that means that money will be spent on that issue, but what may not then be available for another thing that we also want. It's a balanced budget, guys. It's a balanced budget. There's only so much revenue available. I know some people will say we're not being asked to make a decision, but Susan, that's what you were sort of saying. Tell us, we're recommending X. Tell us that that's not a good idea. We can't do that. We really can't.
You would not be asked, you cannot make decisions in a closed session. You would not be asking to make a decision. As I said, right now, all I was trying to do to give you advance notice. Recommendations will be in the draft budget, Jenny, as you stated, when you receive it along with the community on January the 8th. The nature of these recommendations and this will be such, I just thought it would be good for you to know them in advance so you could be prepared for them. That's all.
But I also hear Susan saying, and you saying that you would like to see our reaction.
You never heard me say anything about wanting to see reaction.
I'm sorry, but I thought that's what Susan was saying, and that would help people know whether or not they have jobs. We can't do that.
No.
Yes, I did not intend to imply that, if that's what you heard. I apologize for that. This is not a decision-making thing. It's just for you to sit on, to hear, to think about, and then it's whatever we put in the budget in January, that's when you would be making the decision.
All right, Shari and Lynn, and then let's try to, and then Dick. Shari, Lynn, and Dick. No, I guess Jess is in there.
I think this is becoming more confusing than it is clear. My understanding is that if this is about budget, if it's about the budget framework, it's about the finances going into 22, 23, 24. Budget has always been a public process. It's always been done in open session. The ideas that you may be presenting to the board are options. They're always options. The board's not required to agree or to go along. The board is required to come up with some discussion and debate. And that's the way the budget has always been. So I think this can be done as part of an open process where everybody just puts their cards on the table.
Lynn?
Oof, yeah. Well, I hear Milton and Susan. You know, they're concerned about personnel. It is certainly about budget, which, you know, again, as we've all said, should be open. Is there a way for us to just to get a written memo, just the information you want to give, an outline of it? I mean, is that maybe skirting the issue, but for us to opt to, okay, fine, we're going to wait until we hear this for the first time on January 2nd, along with everybody else, and then we're supposed to get all the information and make the decisions and do all the discussions. That's insane. You know, as a board, we do need to know what's going on ahead of time. We absolutely do. So if the board won't close the meeting and Milton won't present it unless the meeting's closed, what's option number 3?
We'll go work that later. Okay. I think Jess was, or was it Dick? I think Jess and Dick. Anything you want to add, Jess?
I don't have anything. No, I mean, I just think that, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we should see if people are willing to close it and let it happen. I think we should trust the staff. If they feel comfortable with it, then, you know, then I think that's what we should do. But whatever, I'm not going to argue anymore about it.
Yeah. Dick, I'll give you the last one and then let's,
Yeah, this is a little strange. This is either tell the board what you're up to, or we're just going to do it anyway. That's what I'm hearing. I would like to suggest we have a 5-minute closed meeting to find out what the hell this is all about, and then we can decide whether we want to continue in a closed meeting or we think this is something that ought to go on in an open meeting.
all right. Let me just ask the board, remember this is what we're talking about. Do you want to hold a closed work session?
5 minutes just to discuss the subject.
I'm getting no's from people.
I'm getting, oh, yes, I'm saying yes. Besides which, in an open session, we have already raised everybody's blood pressure by another 50 points. So I would suggest that we, out of respect for CA, out of respect for Milton, I am asking that you guys reconsider and give him the 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever, and then we will understand what's going on, and then we can judge whether or not we think it should be open or not.
Yeah, because remember, you can always cancel a work session. You can always say, let's adjourn it. All right, got to wrap this up here. All right, all those in favor of holding a closed work session under Section 1 and Section 6 on the HOA Act. Oh boy, let me see here. Renee,
No.
Alan,
Definitely not. This is an end run around the issue.
Jess,
Yes.
Jess, Nancy,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes, reluctant.
No, absolutely not.
Ginny,
No.
Shari,
No.
Okay.
Andy, yes. Okay, no closed work session. All right, thank you very much. We are done then for the evening, or finished all our agenda. So remember, next Thursday, on the 29th, we have the budget workshop for fiscal year 2022. So good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night, everybody.
See ya.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.